So how might the Sprint T-Mobile deal reshape the wireless industry? Joining us now to talk about that is Jonathan Chaplin. He is managing partner at New Street Research. Welcome, Jonathan. Nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
You say this ushers in and paves the way for, quote, real disruption. How do you see that playing out?
It does. So what the deal does, if it goes through, and bear in mind we've still got a fight with the states here and it's still somewhat in the balance, but if it all goes through and Dish ends up building this network, you'll have two networks with a tremendous amount of capacity on them with a very, very low unit cost. And that is a recipe for disruption. So to put that in perspective, between T-Mobile and Dish, they'll have 65% of the industry's capacity. Dish has no revenues in wireless today, except for what they buy from Sprint. T-Mobile and Sprint together, including what they're selling to Dish, have about 30% of the industry's revenues. So they've got the opportunity to effectively double the share they have in the industry because they've got all of this excess capacity and a very low cost. And that spells that spells out disruption in our view.
Right. But the 13 states that still disapprove of this are worried about job loss and higher prices for consumers. Do they have a valid case?
They do to some extent. If what they're worried about is how real Dish is as a new entrant. Dish has been sitting on a pile of capacity, a pile of spectrum for half a decade, and they've done nothing with it. They've made a lot of promises in the context of this deal that should hopefully compel them to finally build a network, put it to use, and get into the business. That's what the fight in the courts is going to be about. It's about how real Dish is, how much can we trust them to follow through on their commitments. But if they do, the things are going to get really, really interesting in the wireless industry. Consumers ought to be big beneficiaries. In fact, any business that has a product or service that's delivered over a network ought to ultimately be a beneficiary of this deal because the costs of connectivity are going to go down.
And what about the cable industry?
Also a beneficiary. So they're in the wireless business today in a very small way, and they're relying on Verizon's network. And the degree to which they can be disruptive is limited by what they pay Verizon for access to that network. And Verizon's got no interest in giving it to them cheaply because Verizon's their biggest competitor. But if they can go and buy capacity from Dish much more cheaply, first of all, they'll have a better, more profitable wireless business, but it gives them the ability to be more aggressive, go after more share,
right,
take prices down, all of which is good for consumers.
Well, they cleared a big hurdle today, but there's still those legal issues to face. We'll see what happens. Jonathan Chaplin with New Street Research. Again, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.